This is the third in our series on the basic message of the Bible. In the first one we thought about God, the creator of the universe. And God created a world of wonder, of joy and love, of freedom, wisdom and creativity. And created us to rule, nurture and care for that world. In the second, that we saw that God himself had stepped into human time and space in the person of Jesus, so we could know what he was like and relate to him. Now when we look at the world today, we still see the wonder and the joy and the love and the freedom and the wisdom and the creativity. But alongside that, we also see injustice and fear and shame and slavery and addiction and suffering and death. We're going to think about why it is that God's wonderful world is in such a mess. And the very short answer is that sin has opened the door to evil and death. Now, society has forgotten what that word sin really means. When we think of sin, we think of lying and murdering and stealing and cheating and sleeping around. And they're all actions, and they're all specific sins. But the heart of sin isn't an action, but an attitude, and specifically an attitude towards God. Sin is to push God away from the centre of our lives and replace him with something else. Sin is rejecting and replacing God. This is how the prophet Jeremiah put it. My people have committed two sins. They have forsaken me, the spring of living water, and have dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water. Sin is to reject God. Since God is love, then rejecting God opens the door to evil and hate. And this is how the Bible describes God's response to sin. The Lord saw how great man's wickedness on the earth had become, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil all the time. And the Lord was grieved that he made man on earth, and his heart was filled with pain. Sin ruins God's wonderful world, and sin breaks God's heart. Now, since sin is turning our back on God, then sin inevitably breaks our connection with God, making him seem distant and remote, or even not there at all. As Isaiah says, your iniquities have separated you from your God, your sins have hidden his face from you. Now God is the one who brings order to the world and gives us life, and so to be cut off from God is to unleash chaos and to face death. We're like cut flowers. We still have life in us, but that life is ebbing away. Sin cuts us off from the source of our life and inevitably leads ultimately to death. As Paul put it, the wages of sin is death. Sin and death and evil unravel God's creation. And so God is utterly opposed to sin and evil. This is how the Psalms put it. You are not a God who takes pleasure in evil. With you, the wicked cannot dwell. The arrogant can't stand in your presence. You hate all who do wrong. You destroy those who tell lies. Bloodthirsty and deceitful men, the Lord abhors. Now, at first reading, that might sound harsh and threatening, but actually, it's our only hope. Because if God just tolerated or lived with evil, then the world would forever be stuck in the mess that we see it now. To rescue the world from sin and evil and death, God must judge and ultimately destroy sin, evil and death. But that creates quite a serious problem because, of course, we are all guilty of sin and we're all enslaved by death. So to sum up, God created a wonderful world, but evil, acting through our rejection of God, has ruined that world. And in the next few sessions we'll think about what Jesus has done to rescue both us and the whole of creation from sin, evil and death.